Hello. Hi, Abhishek. Hi, sir. Professor Rajashekaran.
Yes, madam. Good morning.
Yeah.
Good morning. Thank
Good
you.
morning, ma'am.
Professor Rajashekaran has kept a track. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Yeah.
Wow.
It is my
So good to
pleasure,
see you. So good to see
myself,
you.
Dr. Abhishek Chandra, webinar coordinator and the convener. And this webinar on the topic of the capacity building for the student on the environmental degradations and ecosystem restoration. It is the jointly organized by Society for Environment and Development, SED India, New Delhi, and Department of Environmental Science and Botany, Sri Venkateswar College, University of Delhi. In this program, we are having the 4 invited lecture, and the first lecture and our chief guest, Professor S.K. Barik, Director CSIR, National Botanical Research Institute, Lucknow, as well as the CSIR, Indian Toxicological Research Center, Lucknow. Most welcome, sir. And apart from the second invited lecture from the Professor A. Anantaraman, Dean, Faculty of Marine Sciences, Annamalai University. And the third invited talk from the Professor S. Ramarao, Department of Biotechnology and Informatics, Nehu, Siulang. And the last 4th invited talk from the Dr. Sher Singh Samant, Director, Forest, Himalayan Forest Research Institute, Shimla. So with these words, I welcome to our organizing secretary to introduce the Professor S.K. Barik, sir. Professor S.K. Barik is the professor in the North. Before joining to this NBRI, he is the director and the professor in the Northeastern Hill University. And he is published to the several papers, international and international and reputed journal. He is the several PhD students in his supervision. With these words, I invite to the Professor S.K. Barik, sir.
Give me a little bit time.
Yes, sir. Yeah, before to that, I invite Professor C. Rajashekaran, sir. Okay, sir.
Is it visible or no?
Yes, sir, it is visible.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I'll just make it slideshow. Yeah, it is slideshow mode now.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is perfect.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Let me thank first the Department of Botany and Department of Environmental Sciences of Venkatesh College, New Delhi, and also the Society, Environmental Society, the joint organizers, for inviting me to speak on this occasion. And it is more important that, yes, it is for the students and to develop their capacity. Well, let me thank Dr. Abhishek, Dr. Rajashekaran, and all of you. Of course, I don't know personally any one of you, but when any student program comes and that to capacity development, usually I don't say no. So thank you for inviting me and also giving this time slot when I was relatively free. Okay, the topic is environmental degradation strategies for eco-restoration. So basically, this is a student's program. So I will focus my presentation on keeping students as the target audience. Let me go back to the basics of ecology. As you all know, in the biotic spectrum, when we talk about the starting from the DNA, genes, nuclear or chromosomes, nucleus, cell, tissue, organs, organisms, and from where usually we say conventionally the domain of ecology starts, organisms, populations, communities, ecosystems, landscapes, biospheres, so on and so forth. But today the dimensions they have changed. Ecology is not confined from the organismic ecology, ecology, and the right hand side onwards. It is now it very much starts from the gene itself. So you will find that the molecular ecology is a very predominant area of research today. So the conventional definition that ecology or environment study starts from the organism and onwards is not correct today. So right from the gene level, we start studying ecology. Well, you will see that when we talk about the environmental degradation and strategies for eco-restoration, mostly it is the ecosystem level we are talking, but we must not forget that any alteration to the components of an ecosystem, be it habitat, be it community, be it population, and you will find any level of these organizations, when any alterations happen, naturally the ecosystem is affected. And on the other hand, what are those things which are affected in ecosystem? We know basic things, 4 aspects of an ecosystem. One is the structure, second is the function, third is the processes, and fourth is the services. So when environmental degradation takes place or any perturbations take place, naturally all these 4, that is ecosystem, structure, function, process, and services, are adversely affected. So this is the basic. So if there is a perturbation or external stress, ecosystem, as you know, the 6th functional attribute of an ecosystem, that is the homeostasis. So that means any ecosystem, I believe all of you know the 6 structural attributes of an ecosystem, 6 functional attributes of an ecosystem, and of course the processes like regeneration, disturbance, all these are the processes, and of course the services which the human derives the benefits. There could be protective function, there could be like the oxygen, and or it could be the conjunctive functions, like whether you are deriving some food materials, goods and services, all those things basically I believe you know. But the issue is now it is not that important. When any external perturbations takes place, all these processes, services, the flow of services gets diminished, and also the structure is altered, function is completely affected, so that in turn services will be reduced, processes will be affected. So these 4 things of ecosystems are affected. But the interesting part is, as you know, an ecosystem, it can be from a test tube of the tissue culture lab, or it can go up to the huge ocean. So ecosystem boundary is defined by a researcher. So you will find that these ecosystems, invariably, they are always exposed to the external perturbations. So when we talk about the environmental degradation, it is not at the ecosystem level. So far what I said, it could be at the population level, it could be at the community level, even it can be at the habitat of the ecosystem, it could be possible, and of course the total ecosystem and landscape level. So at the different scales of the biological spectrum, the perturbations they do affect, and ultimately the environmental degradation takes place. What does it mean, environmental degradation? Degradation means any alteration, but that is in a negative way. That means it compromises with the potential of the maximum productivity or any of the ecosystem functional parameters. So in this talk, I will say something basic what I said now, but most of the things I will say based upon my experiences, what we have done for several years. So those examples I will give you. And in the process, you will see that how the ecosystem or environmental degradation studies, they help us in developing the strategies for eco-restoration. So these are the two things. First, you quantify the environmental degradation, how it happens, and what are those trends. And based upon that, can we develop the strategies for eco-restoration? So some of the stories which I'm going to talk to you, they are all based upon my own experiences. So let me start now. Yeah, it is here. One more thing I must tell at this point of time, as I was telling, that each and every ecosystem, whether it is a small or it is a large ecosystem, they have their own homeostasis mechanism, that means self, through the cybernetics, through the self-governance system. So they have that emerging property that yes, they can withstand this type of external perturbations, disturbances, and that mechanism is called the homeostasis, all of us you know. And that homeostasis involves, there are two mechanisms. One is the stability. Homeostasis leads to the stability of an ecosystem, and the stability is achieved through the two mechanisms. One is the resistance, other one is the resilience. Resistance means, yes, suppose for example, I will give you an analog that or a metaphor that yes, you are very strong. So anybody who can come and if he really hits you, he hits you, but you are not affected by that because you are resistant to that external force and you are not falling down. But suppose you are a little bit weak than the external force, so you fall down. So when you fall down, that doesn't mean that you have lost. Again, suppose you have the capacity to again stand and withstand the external forces, that is called the resilience. So this resistance and resilience, I think the difference you know now. If any external force comes, attacks you, and you are so strong that you resist, you don't have much effect on that. So that it is the resistance. You have the more resistance, you have high resistance, so you are withstanding the external perturbation pressure. Suppose the pressure is too high, the external force is very high dimension, you couldn't resist it, so you fall down. But that is not all. It is not over. Again, you stood up and you try to give the resistance. So that is the resilience. Even if you fall, but again you have the capacity to rejuvenate. Again you stand up and again you give the resistance to the external perturbation. So that is the resilience. So the resilience mechanism and resistance mechanism, these two contribute to the stability of an ecosystem, and that is the homeostasis mechanism, the sixth functional attribute of any ecosystem. So each and every ecosystem, they have this particular property. So the now question is it that any amount of external perturbation, any dimension one ecosystem can resist? No, there is a threshold limit. So that's how we will say that resilience, resistance, stability, and equilibrium, sustainability, these are very, very related terms, but they are not all synonymous, and they at times they complement to each other, and the concept is developed with the combination of these words. Well, as I said, the degradation can take place at several biological spectrum, at the several levels of the biological spectrum. So population level, it can say, so that's how a species becomes threatened, because the population, because of the genetic drift, because of the external forces, the population size becomes too small, and ultimately it leads to the genetic drift, and finally the population got depleted. So if the component of a particular entity, say for example, ecosystem consists of a number of communities and habitat, and communities, they consist of several populations. So these are the components. If the constituent components, they also get degraded or get depleted, naturally at the higher level also that will be reflected. So we must know that degradation is not a concept of only ecosystem level. Degradation can take place at the lower level than the organizational level ecosystem, which is the most affected, and we can say that yes, the management is done at that level, but that doesn't mean that at population level, community level also we do not do the management. So some of those examples I will give in my presentation. The best method, the ecosystem, is the forest ecosystem. You know, this is the photograph of a sacred forest in Jaintia Hills, where I was working right from the 1988. You can say till today also I keep on working. So this is the Reliang Sacred Forest, where you are not allowed to go with a shoe, with a pair of shoes. You have to take off your shoes, then only you are allowed. And once upon a year, that is in this particular time, April 14 to 7 days, they allow 20 up to April 21, where they do the worships and all. And that is the belief system that has conserved this type of ecosystems. As you know, in India, we are proud that still around 3 lakh of such sacred forests are still existing in this country. Once upon a time, all the sacred forests were existing throughout South Asia, Southeast Asia, African countries, Latin America, Japan, and many other countries. But today, I think we are proud that still we have these natural heritages, and 1% of them are at least intact. And you will find throughout, starting from the northeast up to south, down south, you will find that Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, even everywhere you will find the sacred forest culture is there. So these sacred forests, at times we tell that they are the islands of biodiversity, not only the plant, but also microbial, animal, birds, everything. So you will see that here, just I have given an example. They provide a lot of services, whether habitat services, provisioning services, regulatory services, cultural services. And you will see that example just adjacent to this. You can see that banana and this paddy field. For last 40 years, almost, I am seeing them in the same, or 35 years, I am seeing them in the same condition. Not a single drop of fertilizer, forget even the cow dung is not applied to this. That means the nutrients coming from the forest are really enriching this agro ecosystem and giving bumper yield year after year. So that is one of the example how the nutrient cycle is really maintained in a closed ecosystem like this forest ecosystem, and that not only provides the nutrient security to the ecosystem but also to the adjoining ecosystems. And we have the data also how the yield is maintained, how the nutrient cycles are maintained even in the agriculture ecosystem because of the presence of this forest ecosystem. So this is an example of undisturbed, subtropical, broad-leaved, wet hill forest, which is highly species rich, and this is the example. And in case we don't do, in case it is, this is the situation you see, in the same state, just adjacent district in Jaintia Hills, West Kasi Hills, near the Domiasiat, where this uranium mining was proposed. So this is the, again, a sacred group, Kilailingam. It is also a sacred group, but you see the condition. So it is not that always that anthropogenic forces, they only cause the disturbances. No, also the natural causes. Say, for example, even if there is no perturbations, then also a tropical forest, a subtropical forest, they undergo a cycle of, events, and that is natural in disturbance. For what example, suddenly there is a storm and a tree is uprooted, or even if there is no storm, suddenly you will find that one tree is dying because of aging. So there is a gap in the canopy hole. So that is called the canopy gap. And once this tree dies, you will find that light regime completely changes, and the seedlings which they were in the beneath of those living tree, suddenly they start growing out. And so this is called advanced regeneration, because the microenvironmental conditions completely change. So this is also a disturbance, which is very, very mild type of disturbance, and it is natural, but they also alter the structure of the ecosystem. Because of the changing microenvironmental conditions, that leads to colonization of a new group of species. And that's what I will be talking a little bit later, that how different regeneration guilds, they occur inside these ecosystems, and different regeneration guilds, they also depend on these natural disturbances. And if it is up to mild level, then that leads to the species diversity in a particular ecosystem. So my point here is these disturbances cause to degradation, and it could be anthropogenic, it could be natural. Always not that anthropogenic causes, but this type of situations, what you are seeing in Kilailingam, it is purely anthropogenic. It is beyond the repairing. You see the other factors here. This is the Kanchenjunga Biosphere Reserve in high altitude of Sikkim. Here you see this disturbance is not because of anything else but the grazing. So again, another anthropogenic causes. This is the typical situation in the Northeast. This is a photograph from Garo Hills of Meghalaya, where you will find after the zoom, that is a shifting cultivation, the 12 years fallow has been rejuvenated like this tree, but unfortunately, again, the people come and they cut down this patch and they will burn it. They will cultivate for 2 years because you know that nutrients are always in tropical climate arrested in the vegetation, not in the soil. So once you are cutting the tree, it is not that you are destroying the tree or vegetation, but also you are bringing down the nutrients down on the soil. And because he has to cultivate, so he will cut it into pieces, then burn it. Because unless he burns, there is no nutrients. So once he burns, nutrient is released. But at the same time, whatever plants you do, although they plant up to 60 to 100 crops at a time, then also you'll find that all the nutrients which were suddenly released because of the burning, slashing and burning, they are never utilized by the crop plants. So most of them, after whatever they utilize, the remaining they go downstream, the rivers, streams, then the rivers, then it goes to the ocean. In the process, we are losing the valuable nutrients. So that is most important. And soil is impoverished already. There is not much nutrients. So after 2 years, the farmer, or maximum 3 years, the farmer is bound to shift to another new piece of land. And in the process, the cycle continues. And most of the good forests, even because of the increasing population density or population pressure, they will not be waiting 12 years, the example which I gave. They will come down even after 3 years, again, they will come back to that. 3 years means nothing is there. So after 3 years, again, they come back. So repeated cultivation like this without giving adequate rest, the rejuvenation doesn't take place. Ultimately, you'll find the completely landscape gets devastated and it becomes a bare, completely nude hilltop. And this is the deforestation. This is the example of another sacred grove, which is one of the largest one, 900 hectare, and suddenly cut down because it is owned by the then head, and he gave it to contract, and then he cut down the trees. Only 75 hectares is left. It is Pahampadam sacred forest. So these are the factors which really causes the disturbances to the ecosystems. And this is the host farm coal mining. You can see that completely devastating. Not only the forest is cut, but also they dump these things, and you will find the grassland ecosystem, which is an arrested stage of succession, that is also affected. So these are the factors. So when we started the study, and because of this degradation of the ecosystem, you will find that not that people are not doing any effort. Several studies have been conducted. In the way back in 1988, we started this work. We defined this or quantified this disturbance. So this is the disturbance index we studied in the 3 forests there. And you can see that all of them, they are affected significantly. And also, you will find that it is biotic stresses do affect diversity. You can see this one. So you will find, one second, just. Nakiji, I will call you back. I'll call you back. Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, no problem, sir.
Yeah. So you'll find that biotic stresses also do affect diversity. This is an example where we studied the regeneration potential along the disturbance gradient in the highly disturbed, mildly disturbed, undisturbed. You can see, and Lithocarpus quercus, these 2 species, when we studied, you can see the disappeared, rotten, and germinated, and hardly 0.5, 1.9, 1.7% of the total seeds produced. Imagine 99% of the seeds are getting wasted, and that's why the regeneration is not successful. So that means it is the process which is affected. So what I'm trying to say here, not only the structure, I have shown you in the earlier slide where you could see, this one, the structure is affected, whether it is the evenness index, or it is the population distribution, or it is the distribution pattern. All these things are affected, the structural attributes, but also you'll see the processes are affected here. So the processes means regeneration process is drastically compromised because of the biotic pressure. So it is not that always abiotic stresses or anthropogenic pressure that leads to the disturbance or degradation, but also you will see that here is the example how the biotic pressure, that means the rodent, they are eating the seeds, a small thing, and they are affecting the regeneration process, and that also contributes to the degradation of the ecosystem or even the population also, because the particular species population, they get depleted in the next generation. So this is the example. Also the invasive alien species you can see here, we modeled it in the, you can see the 155 invasive plant species we found, and you will find that they are affecting the biodiversity reach of this country. Wherever the biodiversity hotspots are there, these invasive alien species they are invading it slowly. So in the 47 ecoregions, 19 out of 47 ecoregions in India harbor the invasion hotspots. So we defined the concept invasion hotspot and we mapped it for India. So invasion is another factor also, which also destroys or degrade the ecosystem. You see the examples of this. I was talking you, too short fallow period or continuous cropping gives the picture like this. This is the first one. This one is from, I'll take out. This one is from Nagaland. This first one. This is right one is the Arunachal Pradesh, and this is the Meghalaya. Okay, so these are the results of the short fallow period. So now let us come to, because we have to study that how the natural system takes care of. So this is the recovery of forest community structure following the shifting cultivation. So this one we studied in the Garo Hills near Nakrek Biosphere Reserve, just outskirts of that in the buffer zone. So you will find that in what this is the chronosequence study we did it. 1 year Jhum fallow, 3 year Jhum fallow, 6 year Jhum fallow, 12 year Jhum fallow, and matured forest. So that means this is the first year fallow immediately after the abandonment. So you will see that even after 12 years fallow, you can see here 67% of the original, that is the matured forest, they could recover. So that means 12 years is not adequate to recover to the original position. Even the same thing for species, 67%, but the density is high, as you know, in the beginning, tree density will be high, but the genera and species, you can see only 67% is recovering after 12 years fallow period. Recovery, sorry. So this is example how the species diversity in a grassland ecosystem following coal mining activities. This is in Cherrapunji area we studied. This is a recent publication. You can see here recovery of species diversity in grassland ecosystem is very slow, and you can see the species sequence, and these are the UG is the undisturbed grassland, and this is the recovery after 15 years of recovery, and this is 50 years of recovery regenerative grassland. And these are the trends. You can see that yes, it takes time, and where you are seeing that undisturbed, you can see more species are there, and it is a even, they are distributed evenly. So we say that this is the log normal distribution. So that means it shows that yes, the ecosystem is healthy, but the steeper this slope, like these ones, you can see this one. If you remove this one, you can see here the slope is steeper. So that means these are the degraded ones, and they are affected adversely. So that species diversity is less, and also the distribution pattern is also, it is very dominance diversity curve is giving the adverse structural attribute. Well. The next is, you can see here now I told you structure and some of the processes. Now let us see the function. So this is the study which again in the same Nakrek Biosphere Reserve area, you can see here natural forest ecosystem. Some of the functional attributes are here. You can see in the change in soil structure also is there, biological activity is there, soil enzymes are there. Here you can see that even the nutrient contents are there, microbial biomass is there. So how these functional attributes of an ecosystem, they recover following the deforestation and burning, slash and burning. You can see now here also the same thing. You can see here after 12 years old fallow also, but here you can see at least many of the soil structure, they're recovering up to 96%, but the nutrient content up to 70 or 73, 79%, or even exchangeable. The microbial biomass is very less, 56% after 12 years fallow. So how many years it will take to recover? that even now also you cannot say, might be for 30 years, might be 40 years, we can generate back, that may not be also 100%. Because as you go towards the end of the recovery process also becomes slower. And this is the example how the litter decomposition process also here. So how this recovery process takes place, and it is relatively very slow in comparison to the structure. Now here is we can answer here why some communities are so species-rich regeneration guilds, which is talking a mechanism. This was published in 1992. You can see that gap phase regeneration, how the different species are really, because they belongs to different regeneration guilds. Say, for example, some of them are set tolerant, some of them are light demanding. So at least these two regeneration guilds, when we compare, so if the mild disturbances are there or disturbance of medium intensity, then usually you will find these regeneration guilds, they are more represented, or more regeneration guilds are present, thereby contributing towards the species richness of the community. So through this study, we could contribute we could understand why some communities are so species rich. If the more regeneration guilds are present, more microhabitat diversity is there, more microenvironmental heterogeneities are there, and that will lead to, and of course the intensity should not exceed the mild disturbance regime, then you will find that the diversity is high in a particular ecosystem, particularly in the tropical and subtropical level. So here you can see the example in Eastern Himalaya, when we climbed right from the 0 meter elevation of Brahmaputra plain, and we keep on climbing up to 7,500 meters up to permafrost area in the high Himalayas, there will be a continuous change in the species diversity, as you all know. And also you know that that is in parallel with the latitudinal parallelism, that is, as you move from equator towards the polar region, from 0 degree latitude towards the polar region, you will find there is a parallelism. As you go in the Himalayas, higher you climb, there will be same thing in the latitudinal, there is a parallelism. So when we talk about the subtropical, we must add that subtropical mountain forest, because subtropical forest will be in the Japan or China. So that is the real subtropical as per the latitudinal classification is concerned. But altitudinal classification along the Himalayas or along the hills and mountains, you will find that is so that's why to differentiate these two, we use the word mountain. So subtropical mountain forest, mountain temperate forest, that will give you the difference that yes, this is a Himalayan or it is a mountain forest. Well, so you'll find that not only the tree species, herb species or shrub species, but the lioness, the woody climbers also, they vary widely. This is from the Plant Ecology and Diversity paper. And you will see that the structure, what I mean to say, and composition, which are the structural attributes of a community or an ecosystem, they are dependent not only on the disturbance, but also it is an interplay between the disturbances and also the agroclimatic conditions or physicochemical adaptive conditions. So this is the example how the changes, complete absence of a particular species after a certain height, and new species they replace. And I believe all of you know that when we talk about this is the microenvironmental conditions, how they affect. So these are the tools we use, the forward regression models, or it is the stepwise multiple regression models that give you which factor is the most important for this. And we also study the alpha diversity and beta diversity, and that clearly gives that intermediate disturbance hypothesis explains high species diversity, which I told. So this is the vegetation papers, the gaps and understory, and you will find that that is the intermediate disturbance hypothesis explains that why it is diversity. And many of us, we know that diversity influences the ecosystem function. But how many you say solid database we have? So this is the study we conducted. It is a Canadian Journal of Forest Research paper where we studied how the plant diversity affects the ecosystem function. And of course, later on we study how the disturbance is causing or impacting this diversity ecosystem function relationship. So here you can see in the Myrica plot, pure Myrica one species, rhododendron one species, Neolitsia one species plot, but mixed plot, always you will find that functional diversity. I believe you understand the functional diversity means it is not only that all the functional attributes of an ecosystem, but also the presence of the soil enzymes, presence of the microbial diversity, all those processes, what is in the nitrogen cycle or the phosphorus cycle, potassium cycle, all those are closed. So all these come under the functional diversity of an ecosystem. So in this mixed plot, all these things were characterized and they were really very high level. And when the disturbance interface we studied, and they were significantly impacting the diversity functional relationship as well. So these are some of the litter decay processes, nitrogen loss, phosphorus loss. You can see from the Kp and T50 and T99 values very clearly that yes, it is high in the mixed leaf litter. That means biodiversity richness contributes to the better ecosystem functioning. This is again, so now I'm coming to the population level. Although I have a full-fledged talk on the species recovery, how do we recover the species populations? Some other occasions we will talk about that, how certain plants are conserved. But this is an example I'm telling how the disturbance impacts the metapopulation dynamics. Metapopulation means, as you know, the total populations of a particular species in a very, very given big area at the national level or at the state level or at the biotope level or at the bioregion level. So you can see here, M1 model means it is metapopulation modeling has been done using the Ramas model, Ramas package. You can see that M1 model and M2 model means M2 is the undisturbed model and undisturbed forest ecosystem, whereas M1 model is the disturbed forest ecosystem. And this was studied in the Kanchenjunga Biosphere Reserve under the MOA project, where you can see that the metapopulation, you can see here, this is the 20 years, 40 years time. So the metapopulation is reducing completely at the just before, even you can see here almost 10 years. So the Paris polyphylla, this is Paris polyphylla population. We studied for Panax Sirogensen and Swastia chiraita and Paris polyphylla. So this is the Paris polyphylla. You can see very clearly, even in the around 15 years or so, the population is getting almost diminished completely. But in case of undisturbed, you can see here, it is much beyond at least 20-25 years, it is coming to that level. So disturbance is a clear-cut impact on the population at a metapopulation level also. Population level, it is already there, that is the species, that's how they are pushing into the extinction. But at metapopulation level also, disturbance impact is very clear here. So that's what I wanted to show here. So same thing with metapopulation modeling. So to rehabilitate or to recover also, we need more number of individuals. So here the metapopulation model says in the M1 model, you can see here, as you know, the number of, this arrow says how many individuals you have to introduce so that the particular population can be really coming back. Say, for example, from vulnerable to near threatened to least concern. So as you number of individuals, more you introduce, more number you introduce, you will find the better conservation status you obtain. So naturally in the M1, so there is an interface also, disturbance also. So in the disturbed, you can see more number of individuals you need to introduce. Whereas in the M2 model, that is the undisturbed model, you need to introduce the less number of individuals to get the same conservation status. So it is in conservation biology, population and threatened species conservation and disturbance interface, how at the metapopulation level also disturbance plays a key role. And before I go to this, I will just tell you one thing. I think this disturbance is so important, which caused the degradation. I think all of you know, there are two great scientists. One is the one is Clement. All of you know the succession theory and all those things we studied. And the same time in 1936, around 1937, there was another scientist, Gleason. He was not actually agreeing to the concept of the, you know, that giant community structure, that yes, a particular community will yield another community or gives birth to another community. And this was the concept, and always succession is the unidirectional or it is predictable. All these concepts were really, he was challenging that time Gleason that no, disturbance causes several, perturbations, and always a community, a given community will not reproduce another community, like a, you know, the superorganism concept, you know, that superorganism concept. So superorganism concept of Clement was challenged that time, but nobody listened. But do you know that after 100 years or more than 100 years, almost you can say, that concept is now almost thrown, and today Gleason's concept of disturbance mediated community structure is accepted. And that's what I'm saying, that a particular science, whatever you say, a theory which you develop in a given point of time, you never know that this, as I said, you, the disturbance has completely changed the concept of the community and succession. Today, what we are studying in our childhood, no more that same definition. So you must know that the disturbance has a very, very overarching type of influence on many concepts as well. Well, this I'm telling you about the something chemical ecology which we are working now. That means that chemical communication between the environment and among the individuals that lead to the plant defense mechanisms, tritrophic, tritrophic mechanisms of the plant defense. Here I can just show you this much. This ant is there, and here is the EFN, extrafloral nectaries, and you know that the floral nectar and the extrafloral nectar totally they differ composition wise. When you have the GCMS profile, you will find that very different composition. So these are the things where you will not, there is no spine, no secondary metabolite which is toxic for the herbivores. If the plant doesn't have, they have, because those things also they have to invest a lot of energy, so the plant cannot devote. So that's why these small glands, you can see EFN, they secrete the something like that extrafloral nectars, and that attracts this type of ants. And once ant is there, the no herbivore will come and eat this particular plant. So this structure we have studied in India now. We have documented several such plant species where EFNs are there, honeydew is there, apid, honeydew, tritrophic interaction. So that is a different concept. That is again a different talk, how the signaling system works, and how the disturbance also affects this type of signaling system. But I would say here only, this is in Macaranga, Chlorodendron, and of course the Prunus 3 species data is given, the Sinus down below, and many other species we have studied. But this much I will tell, that this very fine-tuning relationship between the tritrophic interaction or in the bitrophic interaction, whatever is there, it is a very fine-tuned relationship, and disturbance causes massive damage to this relationship. And in the process also, because of the lack of defense mechanism, because this mutualism between the animal and plant, that interaction fails, the defense mechanism fails, many of the plants are getting vanished because of the disturbance, because the microenvironment is altered. And also you will find that that's how the first thing is if the microenvironment gets altered, these EFNs, they don't appear. In the same species we'll find in the periphery of the forest, they are not having any EFN, but inside in the core of the forest, you will find that EFNs are there. So it clearly says that how the disturbance plays a very important role in the plant defense mechanism as well. That's what I wanted to show you. So this is the latest which we are working now, applications are there. So this is the pre and post herbivore EFN metabolite profiling of U lobota, urina lobota. So this is a detailed study we did, how the the herbivory leads to the secretion of the nectars, which are completely different between the pre. Every morning it secretes, but when it is post herbivory, the total proteomics composition changes, and you will find many hits of proteins are there which really they adapt, and how the signaling mechanisms works, which protein will be there, and how it attracts the third trophic level, that particular insect from a far off places because of the volatile organic compounds. All these studies are we have done now. That is a different story. But what I mean to say, all these fine threads between the different organisms, between the plants and animals, that leads to the various functional attributes of like self-defense process, they're all affected by the disturbance. Okay, because these are some of the micro scale studies I showed you, whether it is the microenvironmental variation, or it is the population level, or the species level, or tritrophic level interactions, how they're affected by the disturbances. Now, because these are the micro level studies, but macro level studies also we have developed now. As you know, here is the satellite fraction of absorbed photosynthetically. Methods we also develop. This is just an example. How we can measure the plant diversity directly using the absorbed photosynthetically active radiation component, so that directly it can be related to the plant diversity. So we can measure the plant diversity loss because of the disturbance directly through this, so that we can rapidly get the result of the impact of the disturbance. So as I said, you will find in the internet and many other sources how the land degradation is taking place, ecosystem degradation is taking place. So this is an example of the land degradation map of India by DRDO. And you will see the different type of wind erosion, barren and rocky, salinization, alkalization, water logging, water erosion. So all these things are, they lead also to, you will find that, to wasteland creation. So these are the different wastelands, barren rocky. So this is the wasteland map of India. You will find that in list 3 data utilizing that. So data are there. In the same way, you will find that shifting cultivation data also in 1415 to 1718. We have the data from 1970. So although there is an increasing trend, but in the Northeast, you will find that still shifting cultivation is there. So we have the methods, this is the Landsat imagery data. So this type of statistics are plenty available in the internet, you will get it. But the fact is that land degradation doesn't stop. Land degradation is in accelerated mode. So what is happening? So land degradation means whether you will find that globally also, whether it is the convention of the combating desertification, CCD, or it is the convention on the climate change or convention of biodiversity, all these factors, all these big conventions are directly or indirectly related to the land degradation. That's why I think, because despite all our treaties, despite all our signatory to all these international conventions, or to the so many COPs or have the conference of parties, but still you see the land degradation or the ecosystem degradation doesn't halt. That's how I think this year it has been declared as the UN Decade of Eco Restoration. So this is the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration to emphasize this degradation of ecosystems that reduces the productivity of the land far below the potential, number one, and also that also impacts the economy of several countries, and particularly the developing countries. They are the most affected because technology deployment is poor, and also the scientific resources and manpower, they are also relatively less. So you will find that ecosystem restoration in the developing countries is the need of the hour. And I think as in India, you have seen the amount of the wastelands, just I gave you a glimpse. So an effort to halt and reverse the decline of the natural world, an intentional activity that initiates or accelerates the recovery of an ecosystem with respect to its health, integrity, and sustainability. Restoration of an ecosystem is an attempt to return to its historical trajectory. The rehabilitation is reparation of ecosystem process, services, and productivity, but it does not mean to restore the ecosystem its pre-existing condition. It never happens. So just to show you some of the things, ecosystem restoration, I have just taken very clearly the total things, because this one gives you the total impact on the restoration and degradation impact. UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, that is 21 to 30, UNEP and FAO, United Nations Environment Programme and Food and Agriculture Organization of the UN, provide the definition, strategies, and importance of ecosystem restoration during the current decade, which are reproduced below. I have reproduced knowingly because it should not be altered what the UN Decade of Ecosystem document says. Ecosystem restoration means assisting in the recovery of ecosystems that have been degraded or destroyed, as well as conserving the ecosystems that are still intact. Healthier ecosystems with richer biodiversity yield greater benefits, such as more fertile soils, bigger yields of timber and fish, and larger stores of greenhouse gases. Restoration can happen in many ways. For example, through actively planting or by removing pressures so that nature can recover on its own. It is not always possible or desirable to return an ecosystem to its original state. We still need farmland and infrastructure on land that was once forest, for instance, and ecosystems like societies need to adapt to a change in climate. Between now and 2030, the restoration of 350 million hectares of degraded terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems could generate more than US 9 trillion in ecosystem services. Restoration could also remove 13 to 26 gigatons of greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. The economic benefits of such interventions exceed 9 times the cost of investment, whereas inaction is at least 3 times more costly than ecosystem restoration. So this paragraph says everything about the importance of eco-restoration and the degradation which we are doing. So the concept, I think many of you know the Bradshaw's 1984 who developed this eco-restoration concept. So you see the trajectory, whether you take is the biomass or nutrient cycling or any parameter of the ecosystem process or function. And here you will see that how the ecosystem structural attributes are taking place, and you can see species or complexity is a parameter. So no action, it goes down and down finally to zero level. or it could be replacement also. We usually do, suppose for example, there is a forest which has been degraded, so you replace it with an agroforestry system or a completely new agriculture ecosystem. Similarly, replacement, it can go up and up. Say for example, here is the agriculture ecosystem you converted from forest ecosystem, but here also replacement, a forest ecosystem can be converted to a grassland, pasture land also. So these are the replacement, but also you can see if no action is taken, it goes down, but enhancement is the rehabilitation or restoration with that reference ecosystem. So if the reference ecosystem you achieve, that is the completely restored, which is very difficult to achieve because of the less kinetic energy available for the restoration purpose. Because once the ecosystem gets degraded, it's really the kinetic energy it loses. So that's why it is very uphill task really to climb. So that's why restoration is always difficult as it goes up and up. So this is the broad stroke concept, general concept. So restoration, rehabilitation, and replacement. That's why there are three concepts. They are not same. So restoration is the highest level, rehabilitation and replacement. At the species level, the goal of restoration ecology is to develop sustainable population of target species, which I was talking about. That is the recovery of species. At the community level, the goal is to rehabilitate or reconstruct the entire ecosystem, making it as similar as possible to an original natural ecosystem that has become endangered. If the environment has been permanently degraded, for example, by the massive erosion of soil or the accumulation of persistent pollutants, the only achievable goal for restoration ecology might be to rehabilitate the site to some acceptable ecological condition. This could occur through the development of a community that is reasonably similar to an original type, even though not all native species can be accommodated, and there are other important differences in the structure and function of the new ecosystem. In even more degraded environments, the only attainable goal might be replacement. So it is more degraded. Imagine, also remember that it is not only that this anthropogenic causes the cause, even the pollution, which could be anthropogenic mostly, pollution also degrades the environment, whether it is the aquatic ecosystem or the soil or it is the air pollution, all of them, they degrade the environment also. So don't think that only this deforestation, coal mining, or whatever I showed you, they are the only factors to degrade. Pollution is another big culprit. Climate change is also impacting in a big way. So you will find all those degradations in case the replacement, particularly in the aquatic ecosystem, when a factory releases so many effluents and they are very highly damaging chemical compounds. So it may not be possible to really even forget about even the rehabilitation. It cannot be possible at all. Forget that restoration. So you have to completely replace a new system. So that is the replacement is essential. So the acceptable new ecosystem for the one side, the criteria for replacement might only be achievable, stable, self-maintaining ecosystem on the site using native species wherever possible. This is done to restore some degree of ecological integrity, natural aesthetics, recreational opportunities, and perhaps economically useful ecosystem. So this is an example how we did it. I will just give you some examples quickly. I will go now because we have just 13 minutes left. So passive restoration and active restoration. There are two concepts. This is our work in the ecological research, where you will see that changes in vegetation and nitrogen mineralization during recovery of a mountain subtropical broadleaf forest in northeastern India following anthropogenic disturbances. So we did it in chronosequence study. So you will find that here is the vegetation recovery vis-a-vis reference ecosystem. So you will find, this is a recent publication, 2017, I think. This is the undisturbed forest. This is the CF1, RF5, and RF10. So these are the different levels chronosequence, 5 years of recovery, 10 years of recovery. So CF is the recovering stand just first year after the disturbance. So you will find that clear cut, the species richness, slowly it is increasing, but yet it is to reach the undisturbed forest level, as we showed in the Nokrek level. This is also in Jointia Hills, in the East Coast Hills near Cherrapunji. This is for a vegetation, that means the forest one. And you will see that similar thing in the, these are diversity indices. So the same pattern. And here you will find that here is the very clear-cut relay floristic model is there following the disturbance. When the secondary succession takes place, very clear-cut relay floristic model. One group of species comes, and after 5 years, you will not find any one of them. So you will find that there is a very interesting, except lithocarpus, you don't find any other tree species which is common to all these recovery stages. So this is the model, and you do the twin span classification so that you can know which are the species which are differential species, we tell them. So here is the, in case of the differentiating the RF5, recovery 5 and the CF1 and RF10, this Anopheles adnata was the differential species. Say Acer oblongum, that is the undisturbed forest and the disturbed forest. This is the differential species. So TwinSpans helps you, the tools are there now which you can do it. Well, so this is the ecosystem function, same way, recovery, you can see that some of the parameters and the nitrogen mineralization, soil physical properties. So you will see that how they are recovering over the time. And this is the recovery, you can see that this is the ecosystem services study, as I told you. So that is the functional attributes and how ecosystem services are, ecosystem functions are affected. So this is the, all over India, we are conducting this study, that certain species study, which I showed you, that are 37 institutions for the country we did from the DBT funding, and this is the MOEF funding where we are trying to do it. The ecosystem services in 16 ecoregions of the country in the sacred forest ecosystems, which are relatively less disturbed. So we saw that undisturbed sacred forest and that disturbed community forest adjacent to that, there is a clear-cut difference. So the disturbance impact is clearly visible. And you can see this is the undisturbed sacred forest and this is the disturbed community forest. Here it is completely pine in the subtropical level, and here is the broad-leaved. So even hydrology we studied, so many other parameters, 8 ecosystem services we studied, whether it is the hydrology, local hydrology, or it is the nutrient cycle, all of them are affected. Here it is the total hydrology downstream, upstream level, and you can see that catchment area modeling, total we did it. So old growth forest, regenerating forest, carbon also, functional groups also they are reflecting nutrient resorption efficiency. Resorption, you know, before the leaf senescence, the nutrient will go to the soil, and it will take time to really recycle back. So what the plants do, the trees do, before the senescence, the nutrients, they go back to the stem. So the nitrogen resorption efficiency also change as per the functional groups, and also disturbance, old growth forest, regenerative forest, disturbed forest. They have also very clear-cut impact on the resorption process also. So this is an example how the processes, whether it is the regeneration process, resorption process, nutrient mineralization process, all of them are affected adversely by the disturbance. So this is the regression analysis between the tree biomass and species diversity indices. So this is basically the carbon study. So how the carbon and the diversity they are used. So this is the total biomass and total nutrient content, nutrient dynamics, nutrient studies in the forest, how it is closed in the disturbed forest and completely open in the undisturbed forest. Here you can see the agriculture, as I was telling you, this is the principal component, and you can see that this is the clearly, this is the disturbed, and this is the disturbed, and this is the undisturbed forest stand. So the forest, they are different nutrient composition wise, and also you'll find that adjacent agriculture also they following the same trend. So these are the analytical tools which use. This is the biomass estimation, carbon sequestration we estimate in the disturbed forest, undisturbed forest. And remember that those who are doing, in case some researchers are here, please remember that when doing the carbon sequestration studies or carbon stock studies, please do develop your own biomass equations, which is possible. And that is instead of following Brown or those equations for the forest specific equations which are developed elsewhere, they are very wrong estimate actually. Well, this is the very recently we published it in this plant diversity in the environmental monitoring assessment. Plant diversity, net plant productivity, and soil nutrient contents of a humid subtropical grassland remain low even after 50 years of post disturbance recovery from coal mining. So I was telling you that big question was there in the forest. So we thought that let us go up to 50 years. So the interesting is that even after post disturbance recovery 50 years also, all these parameters they remain really abysmally low. So we have to work further years. So this is the data up to 50 years. You can see recovering grassland 50 years. So we thought that, as I told you, the pollution, this is the yellow X, yellow boy. That is the AMD, that is the, from the coal mines, you can see that acid mine drainage are there. pH is less than 2 here. So we also developed some eco-restoration models. As I told you, the eco-restoration strategies have to be site specific, and it depends upon the history of the ecosystem, past use, land use history, and the past species composition, microbial composition. Many factors will decide the ecosystem strategy. There is not a single pair of source fit to all the ecosystems or all the problems. No, it has to be site specific, it has to be ecosystem specific, it has to be a climatic region specific. So this one we developed. This is an example. This is from NMHS project of MOEF, where we developed the local microbial populations. We did it, including the metagenomics, and we cultured some of them, which are very important, very things you can see here, the bacillus groups, and also we identified them. through the 16S RNA. Then after that, 0. You can see here that we developed a small, because this is for the small mine owners, landmine owners. So maximum 50,000 rupees we wanted target, then within 50,000 rupees we should have a treatment plan for AMD. So you can see that aerobic treatment, anaerobic treatment, and alkaline treatment. Alkaline treatment means coal mine, there are limestone mines were there, so limestones were just bad we prepared. And aerobic treatment, we isolated the bacteria, as I showed you, for aerobic and anaerobic, and we created this type of, the boxes, the treatment plants, and accordingly they were passed through this. So in the process, we got the clean water. So the treatment, very low cost treatment, you can see here. The final, you can see the water quality. So this is a successful model which we are trying to propagate. And now I will come to the next model. This is, we are working in the Tripura for 8 years under the KFW project, 20 million euro in the more than 800 villages we are working. So you can see how the rehabilitated the shifting cultivation, which is a biggest problem in the Northeast and also in many African countries. So you can see the success story of Sri Amanjoy Yang of Ganganagar ADC village in Tripura. So this model we followed how the development of degraded homeland to be done. It is we tell it is the 4-tier model. So there is a below ground, tuberous root, and of course the herbaceous root like ginger and turmeric here. And you will find that fruit trees like papaya, then of course the emergent tree component, the creepers are there. So that you imagine the farmer is for now it is almost 9 years now, and he has not shifted. So converting the shifting cultivation to settled cultivation through nitrogenous fixing plants and making them self-sustainable so that farmers don't shift and they don't extend the shifting cultivation affected areas by cutting the trees. So these are the examples. Also under the NMHS project, so under KFW project, now in the NMHS project, we have developed the biofertilizer for each state, each district, and we have developed from NBRI here. We converted the biofertilizer in our fermenter and gave to the farmers, and that is a good model. So of the eco-restoration of the shifting cultivation. There are several eco-restoration models are there, but it is not possible to describe everything. But I must say that they are site-specific, they are history-specific, land use history-specific, vegetation history, everything you have to take into consideration while designing a particular model. I gave you example to give you that, yes, how to do it. And this is the last slide, I believe. This is the low-cost forest restoration. Every time when you do the reforestation, or afforestation, it goes now more than 1 lakh per hectare. But I think the low cost forest restoration here, you can see the different harvesting and here the pure native species. So the comparison is, this is, you are getting a benefit out of that after 10 years or more than 5 years. So then again, it converted to the same thing. At the end point, you are finding the same endpoint. So the new methods we have to develop. Big mining projects, or it is any other projects, you will see that you have to do that. And so it is the low cost, the eco-restoration models we have to develop. Thank you so much. I think time is not there now. So if you have any question, please ask me. Thank you so much for inviting me again and giving me this opportunity to share my views. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Now it is the open for the question and answer. If any question or any query from the participants, they can ask.
Dr. Abhishek?
Yes.
I have a question, but let the participants first ask, then I have a question for Dr. Barik.
You can raise your hand if you are having any question or any query.
Madam, you can ask now.
Yeah, yes, ma'am, you
can. Dr. Barik, I have this question. You were mostly talking about the sacred groves or forests. I wonder if they are sacred and they are conserved by the government, why are permissions given to do mining or other activities which will inevitably lead to degradation of the ecosystem? What is the logic behind it?
Actually, the story which I told you, that is a unique area where the land and the resources on it belongs to the people. It is not the government. So it is the 6th schedule area where the land belongs to the people. It is the guaranteed in the constitution in the 6th schedule. So what happens? Government doesn't have the direct control on that. So people, because they are the owners, so they do that. So there are several Supreme Court cases after that. Now it is being regulated, the mining and all. That is a different story altogether. But the fact is that sacred forests are not in a good condition today. As I said, you only 1% of the sacred forests are conserved. 99% of them are degraded. Because as I said, always the belief systems that are there, we always show it off to the people that yes, our belief system is good, we are helping in conservation, that's fine. But the fact is, the belief system is weakening, and people at times they don't believe. At the same time, old populations, they were very firm believers. So it is a very mixed type of stand, but only 1% of the sacred forest we have also documented in several parts of the country. So they are undisturbed. So sacred grove is just one component, but this theory
power shortage, power outage hoga. Abhishek, there must be power outage there.
I think yes. I think that there is a problem with the internet.
Problem with power, yeah. Because light was going and coming, na?
Yes.
We'll wait for a minute before he joins back. Then we can thank him formally. Meanwhile,
Yes,
participants, you can think of some questions to ask, unless you are overwhelmed.
Okay, sorry, I think at the last we got disconnected, but it's okay. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Yeah. Sir, thank you so much.
Sir, one basic question from my, what are the basic factors is required for the development of the equations? As you said that you can make our own equation rather than.
Actually, I could have talked at length on that, but I will just give you, please go to our Annals of Forest Science paper in the, I think it was in 2001, no, 2009, I think. Say for example, 3 factors are required. One is it is best dimension analysis. One is the DBH. Simply you can do that also if you don't have anything else. Otherwise, specific gravity, the wood density. So these are the 3 parameters usually we take it. But if you don't have the machine, only the DBH also it will do. At times, height also is taken another variable. So height, DBH, and wood density. Wood density, if you don't have any equipment, simply put it in take a cube, 1 centimeter cube volume of wood, then you put it in the water, in the glass of water, and how much of water it displaces. That way also very simple methods you can use also if you don't have sufficient equipment. But the most important is, even if you don't have these 3 parameters, height measurement is difficult or wood density is difficult, simply you measure the DBH and run the equation correctly. So that is the regression model, correct regression model to try it. And you take the individual components. It's not just DBH will do, but DBH and also leaf weight harvesting you have to do first to develop an equation for a particular species. At least 30-40 trees you have to. But usually what we do, we don't cut. Nobody permits you to cut. So we keep on searching that where some construction is there or some electric line is being drawn and what are the tree species being cut. Or there is a factory which they have applied for the permission to cut. So we use those opportunities. So like that, I think we have done so far 5 species biomass models we have developed. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll take leave now because the other group is waiting there. So I have to join there. Thank you so much.
Sir, just a moment. Ma'am, is the formal vote of the thanks to you.
Yeah.
Just a 2
minutes. Since you are pressed for time, I'm keeping it very, very short. Is he there or has he
Please
left?
go ahead. Please go ahead. I'm there.
So I'm keeping it really very short, though it's a difficult job. So this was one of the very compelling presentations to understand and defend and promote ecosystem restoration and why UN has designated this decade for that. And the talk was very lucid, sir, eye-opener with in-depth analysis and examples of ecosystems from some of the pristine areas of India. The statement that ecosystem starts with genes is priceless in bringing together the scientists from different strata of biology and other subjects. And it also dispels the misconception that students and teachers have in distributing sciences according to the size. So I can go on and on, sir, but Dr. Barik, I can only say that NBRI is in safe hands with you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Professor Rao is here. Namaste, Dr. Rao. Namaskar. Bye. Dr. S.R. Rao. Chaliye, I'll take leave.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir. And Our next session will be the start 1 o'clock, and it will be the continuously 1 to 2, then 2 to 3, and 3 to 4, and after that we are divided 2 sessions. So all the participants will be joined again with the same link at 1 p.m. Thank you, Professor Rajsekhan sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
And Professor S.R. Rao sir.